Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I have access to the chat, which Alessandra will be monitoring. So if you do have any questions, you can paste them in, and Alessandra will be accumulating them all for me, and then at the end, we'll hopefully address all of your questions. So again, thank you so much for joining today. During this webinar, I'm going to be walking you through how Bill 96 impacts bilingual labeling in Canada, especially if you're doing business in Quebec. So my name is Claire Govea, and I'm the French translator here at Quality Smart Solutions. My job is to help companies companies meet their French language and regulatory requirements for their products. So if you're here today, you're probably looking for guidance on how this new bill affects your business, and most importantly, what you should be doing to stay compliant. So I'll share some practical steps you can take. We'll go over some common questions I hear from businesses dealing with this issue, and we'll see some practical examples of this applied on some labeling. Okay. So I'd just like to, before we begin, give a quick disclaimer. This presentation, as of today, April 30th, 2025, reflects the current state of Bill 96. But as with most bills, things are still evolving, so new updates or clarifications may be introduced over time. This is one of the reasons why the bill can feel complex. So I'd really like for you to think of this presentation as a snapshot of the current landscape. If you have questions about your specific situation, it's really best to check in with us directly for the most up-to-date guidance. Okay, so here's a quick look at where we're headed today, our roadmap. So we'll start with a big picture view of what Bill 96 is and why it matters. Then we'll walk through the key changes to bilingual labeling and who exactly this impacts. We'll also touch on what non-compliance could mean, how to stay on the right side of the bill, and some common questions we hear. Finally, we'll show you some steps that you can take to prepare. Okay, so before we dive into the specifics of Bill 96, I'd just love to take a moment to capture the bigger picture, why this bill exists, and why language has always played such a central role in Quebec's identity. So Quebec is the only province in Canada where French is the sole official language. Every other province in the country, except for New Brunswick, is officially English speaking. New Brunswick is the only province that's officially bilingual. So while French is one of Canada's two official languages at the federal level, the status of French varies significantly across provinces. And in Quebec, however, French is not just a language, it's a defining feature of their identity, culture, and history. So this strong connection to language stems from Quebec being a long-standing linguistic minority within a majority English-speaking country. And throughout Canada's history, Quebec has always taken legislative steps to protect and promote French in all aspects of public life. So from education to government to business. The Charter of the French Language, which was passed in 1977, referred to as Bill 101, was the foundation of this protection. It established French as the language of work, instruction, commerce, and communication in Quebec. Bill 96, which is what we're focusing on today, we can think of it as the latest chapter in that same story. So this is a way for Quebec to reassert its commitment to French, especially in an era where English often dominates in digital spaces, the workplace, and popular culture. So this bill doesn't come out of nowhere. It builds on decades of legislative and identity work that continues to evolve. All right, so let's move on to the next slide here. All right, so the big question, what exactly is Bill 96? Bill 96 is Quebec's major new language law that strengthens and expands the existing French language requirements across the province. If you'd love the official title, it's an act respecting French, the official and common language of Quebec. If you're interested, you can read this online. It's publicly available, but just a heads up, it's 110 pages. So Consider this your friendly warning. It was passed in 2022. Bill 96 was passed in 2022, but many of its provisions are rolling out in phases. And there are many key deadlines continuing into 2025 and beyond. So that's why it's very much a live issue for businesses right now. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's not really a one and done bill, it's evolving. And for that reason, companies are still trying to figure out how to comply. So rather than going through the full legal text, let's focus on what this actually means for you. In short, if you sell products in Quebec, this bill may require you to rethink how your product information is displayed, especially your labels and packaging, with the deadline to meet this requirement by June 1st of this year. So June 1st, 2025. It's coming up. So it's important to know that this isn't completely new, the bill. It's not revolutionizing anything, for example, but French has long been required on product packaging in Quebec, of course. But what Bill 96 is doing is tightening the rules. So it emphasizes that French must not just be present, but it must be clearly visible and at least as prominent, if not more so, than any other language on the product or its materials. So these rules, this is very crucial. These rules don't just apply to companies based in Quebec. Even if your business is located in another province or another country, if your products are sold in Quebec, then this bill applies to you. Okay, so let's take a moment to walk through the way this bill is presented on the website of the Office québécois de la langue française, or the OQLF for short. So for those who are unfamiliar, the OQLF is the government body in Quebec responsible for promoting and protecting the French language. It plays a key role in ensuring businesses operating in Quebec are complying with the province's language laws. So this is a question I asked earlier, I never actually asked this question, but I told you this, but does your company distribute, sell, or rent products in Quebec? If so, then this is really important for you. New rules regarding trademarks on product packaging and labeling will come into effect June 1st, 2025. So I always find it easier to break down first what's not changing before we talk about what will change. So there are many things that are staying the same. So let's break it down that way. So even after June 1st, 2025, the following will still apply. So this is not changing. All information that appears on a product or on its packaging or in any accompanying document must be in French. This includes things like ingredient lists, usage instructions, safety warnings, and so on. You can include this information in another language as well, but it cannot take precedence over the French text. So what this means is French must appear at least as prominently as any other language. And French must be equally accessible. So customers shouldn't have to dig through packaging or documents to find it. It should be right there. I will be showing you some concrete examples of what this looks like, which will hopefully clarify things as well. So, and this is something we will be discussing with concrete examples, but there's always a question, what about trademarks? So a trademark that's legally recognized under the Canadian Trademarks Act can still appear in another language, like English, for example. That part is not changing. However, if a French version of your trademark is registered with the Canadian Intellectual Property Office, it must appear on your product. You can't just default to an English name if a French one exists and is registered. So that is the case now as well. But what will really be changing as of June 1st of this year is it concerns concerning your trademark, it's distinguishing between what's generic or what's part of the trademark versus what's generic or descriptive. So again, this will make much more sense with our examples on the following slides, but starting June 1st of this year, if your trademark contains generic or descriptive terms, like a product's flavor, scent, ingredients, or functions, those parts will also need to appear in French on the product or on a permanently attached label. So an important note is the product name and the company name can still appear in another language. They're not required to be translated, but the generic or descriptive terms of a trademark must be translated into French. So now let's look at some examples. So this is taken directly from the OQLF website. And they've given this example here with the toothpaste. And there's an X, but currently this is technically compliant because all of the text on this label here is registered as part of the trademark. But as of June 1st of this year, I keep saying that date, but it's important. So as of June 1st, 2025, this will no longer be compliant. Why? Well, because phrases like whitening, gum care, mint flavor, main active ingredient, dentists trust this product. These are all considered descriptive elements, not unique branding. So they must now appear in French. Let's see what a compliant version of this label would look like. So here on this slide, we can see the difference. So instead, here on this previous slide, we had the English and then the back was blank. Here we have the English and the French version. So you can see everything has been translated into French, except for the product name, Happy Teeth. This may remain in English. That part doesn't need to change. This is a registered trademark, and it's the product name can remain in English. Let's look at another example. So we have some body wash here. This body wash packaging, so we can see on the left, it's technically compliant for now because the full content is registered as a trademark. But as of our magic date, June 1st, 2025, it will no longer meet the new requirements. Why? Well, because elements such as the fragrance, so pear and lavender, the description, or really all the product characteristics listed here, they must also appear in French. So you can see the corrected version on the right side. The brand name Best Soap, however, can still be in English. There's no translation needed there. And similarly, as I mentioned before, the company name can remain in English. Okay, so I'm just going to check in. Just checking in the comments, but we're good. All right. So let's talk about key deadlines. I think I've said it 25 times now, but there is a transition period in place. So from our we'll call it our scary date of June 1st, 2025 to June 1st, 2027, companies can still continue to market products that don't yet meet the new requirements, but only if certain conditions are met. So these conditions include if the product was manufactured before June 1st, 2025, and no French version of the trademark was registered by June 26th, 2024. So we can send you these dates in writing, but there's also another stipulation. If the product was manufactured between June 1st and December 31st, 2025, and it complies with a new federal food labeling regulations, that's compliant as well. So these are the conditions that can be met. So if your product was manufactured before June 1st, 2025, and no French version of the trademark was registered by June 26th of last year, then you'll be good until June 1st, 2027. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. So a really important thing to remember, this, as I mentioned, the document's 100 pages long. The bill, sorry, is 100 pages long. It doesn't just have to do with labeling. There's there's so much more to it. And even with labeling, it's not just about the labels themselves. Under Bill 96, the rules apply to everything that ships with your product. So, instruction manuals, for example, warranty cards, promotional inserts or flyers, digital documents. This is a really key one that we'll discuss later. Digital documents shared with Quebec customers, any supporting documentation or collateral. And yeah, so if it's included in the packaging, it has to follow the bilingual labeling rules. And this is an important distinction I'd like to make, but product packaging is not the same as display stands. So display stands like the kinds you see in stores promoting products, they're considered commercial advertising. So this means they must follow the same like clear predominance of French rules. So the French text must be visibly dominant. Okay, so who must comply with Bill 96? Who is affected by this bill? I've mentioned it already, but I'd like to be a bit more specific here. So the short answer is, if you sell products in Quebec, this applies to you. Whether you're based in Quebec, another Canadian province, or even outside of Canada, this bill applies to you. And of course, if you're a business operating directly in Quebec, you're definitely on the hook. And it's not just limited to manufacturers, but retailers, distributors, importers, you're all part of this. If non-compliant products are in your stores, you could be held responsible alongside your suppliers. So really, essentially, if your goods are available to Quebec consumers, this could be through a physical store, distribution channel, what have you, you need to be aware of how Bill 96 changes the rules around bilingual labeling. Okay, let's talk about non-compliance. This is something we work very hard to avoid at QSS. But unfortunately, when it comes to Bill 96, non-compliance isn't just a technical oversight, but it can carry serious consequences. First, of course, you can see here on the slide, there are fines and penalties. These could range from a few $1,000s to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the nature and frequency of the violation. Repeat infractions would escalate quickly. So the OQLF is actively monitoring and enforcing the law, especially with these new rules coming to effect shortly in this year. Second, you could face product recalls. If your packaging doesn't comply, your products may need to be pulled off the shelves in Quebec. So, of course, that means lost sales, but more than that, it can strain your relationship with retailers. It can cause a disruption to your supply chain and result in the costly reprinting of packaging or relabeling of inventory. So, yeah, imagine you had a full run of products sitting in a warehouse, ready to ship, but you're not legally allowed to put them on shelves because of a labeling error. And this is kind of an important note, but there's the risk also to your brand's reputation. Quebec consumers are highly attuned to whether companies are respecting the province's language laws. One complaint could maybe lead to a media story, an investigation, or even a boycott of the product. A small oversight in this could make a brand appear careless or out of touch with the local market, especially when competitors are getting it right. And on that note, it's also important that the French that's being used in the translations is Quebec French and not France French. So they're both standard French, but there are very important distinctions. You could spend a whole day looking into the differences between the two languages. It's fascinating, but vocabulary and phrasing, it is different between Quebec and France. So it's important that you're getting that right. It's especially important for food and consumer goods. If a Quebec consumer sees European French, it can make your product feel foreign or disconnected from the Quebec market, which is exactly what you don't want when trying to build customer trust. So, in short, I guess this isn't really just about checking a compliance box, but also respecting the linguistic and cultural expectations of Quebec consumers, and showing them that your brand is committed to doing business this way. So, how can your business stay on the right side of Bill 96 bilingual labeling rules? First, of course, you can audit your materials. So, review all your product packaging, manuals, inserts, and marketing collateral. Is French coming first? Is the font size compliant? Second, update marketing materials. So, don't forget about brochures, digital PDFs, and online downloads. This is really important if they're offered in Quebec. And third, you can partner with experts. So at Quality Smart Solutions, for example, we specialize in helping businesses interpret Bill 96 and apply it across all materials. Our team combines regulatory knowledge with hands-on industry experience. And fourth, it's important to educate your team. So legal, design, marketing, all the teams need to be aligned. Often non-compliance issues come from miscommunication between departments. So before we wrap things up, let's go through a few common questions that often come up when I'm speaking with businesses about Bill 96 and bilingual labeling. So we have, I have two slides here with questions. So we'll go through these three, and then there's another three. And then after that, I would love to see some of your questions in the chat. So we'll get to those shortly. All right. So I'm just opening the chat to see some of the questions now. Okay, so the first question here, that's a common question, is does Bill 96 apply to digital materials too? And I've mentioned this during this presentation, but yes, it absolutely does. If you have materials like digital manuals, brochures, or downloadable product guides that Quebec consumers can access, these files need to follow the same rules as your printed materials. It doesn't matter if the content's online or inside the product box. If it's going to the Quebec market, it has to be compliant. Here's another one that I get often. It's, can we still use our English trademark? Yes, you can still use your English trademark in Quebec, even if it's not registered. So thanks to the updated regulation, both registered trademarks and unregistered trademarks are allowed in their original language, as long as there isn't a French version of the trademark registered in Canada. But that said, there's an important detail to watch out for here. And this is like we saw on the soap bottle. If your trademark includes generic or descriptive terms, those parts need to be translated into French. So you might ask, like, what really counts as a generic or descriptive term? And this is where it's a little gray, but a generic term refers to what the product actually is. So words like shampoo, soap, toothpaste. A descriptive term will tell you something about the product's feature. So qualities like, if we're talking about hand lotion, moisturizing, organic, with the toothpaste, whitening, and perhaps extra gentle. So even if these terms are stylized or integrated into your trademark, you're still required to provide a French translation for that. And the French translation must appear directly on the product or on a label that is permanently attached to it. So just to be clear, you don't need to translate your full trademark. You only need to translate the generic or descriptive elements within it. And that's also different than the product name. As we saw with the body wash, the best soap was okay to stay in English. But here, let me come up with another example. Let's say you had, the product is called Nature Glow Organic Body Wash. I'll repeat that, Nature Glow Organic body wash. So even if that entire phrase is your trademark, you still need to translate the descriptive parts of that. So, for example, Nature Glow could remain in English, but organic body wash needs to be in French. And really, this is so that Quebec consumers can understand what the product is and what it does, even if your brand name stays in English. I hope that makes sense. So I guess the question would be, do we need separate labels for Quebec? Not necessarily, but you might. So if your current product labels already include all the required French content, so especially the translations for any generic or descriptive terms, like I just explained, then you may not need a separate label for Quebec. But if your existing labels don't meet the new French language requirements under Bill 96, you do have a few options. You can redesign your main product label to meet Quebec's requirements across all markets, or you could use a Quebec-specific version of the label, either printed directly on the packaging or added as a permanently affixed sticker or tag. But the keyword here would be permanently. Temporary stickers or removable labels will not meet the requirements. The French content needs to be durable. It needs to be able to stay with the product. So the short answer to this question is you don't need a separate label if your current one is compliant, of course. But if it's not, you will need to adapt by either redesigning your main packaging or creating a Quebec-specific version that meets the rules. Okay. What about public signage? Can it stay bilingual? So this might not be relevant for some, but it may. But the French text on any public signage needs to be twice as large and equally visible and permanent as other languages. So I can share more information if you'd like about that specifically, but this also applies to digital signage. And in that case, actually, French must appear for twice the duration as English for digital signage. Okay, and then one more question. What happens if we don't act early enough or we miss the deadline? So as I mentioned before, there is a grace period. Anything manufactured before June 1st, 2025 can still be sold until June 1st, 2027. Unfortunately, there's no grace period for public signage. That must be fully compliant by June 1st, 2025. And unfortunately, delays can lead to rushed changes, non-compliance, and potential fines or product removals from the Quebec market. Okay, and then what steps should we prioritize first? So the first step would be to audit your products and signage and identify anything that might not comply with the new rules under Bill 96. So you can look closely at your product packaging, labels, trademarks, digital materials, and any signage visible from outside your business as well. But you can flag any English trademarks that include generic or descriptive terms. So these will require French translation on the product or on a permanently attached label, even if the rest of the trademark can remain, even if the rest of the trademark can remain in English. Okay. And so it's really just a good idea to start revising your digital assets like brochures, manuals, and product guides that can be accessed online by Quebec consumers because they must follow the same language rules as your physical materials. And it's important to just have a good compliance timeline in mind, so which gives you enough time to reprint packaging, update signage, and make any necessary design changes before June 1st, 2025, which is the enforcement date. And again, I don't want you to forget, there is a grace period until June 1st, 2027 for non-compliant materials manufactured before June 1st, 2025, but there's no grace period for signage. Those changes must be ready by the deadline. Okay, so that brings us to the end of me talking um, and the webinar on Bill 96 and bilingual labeling in Canada. So I hope this gave you a clearer view of what to expect and how to start preparing. It's a great time now. We can ask some questions. I see that some in the chat. And depending on the timing, it might be easier to note down a lot of these questions, and I can send a full detailed answer in an email, but let's see what we have here. So, okay. For promotional materials, do you have a list? So for this question, I can definitely reach out to you about that. Product name must be translated the same and same font size. Yes, this is very critical. French must be equally as prominent as English on the label. That includes font size and font color. So sometimes you'll see like a bright red English text and then maybe something in a light gray underneath in a small font. French and English need to have the same prominence on your label. If we have printed product packaging before June 1st, can we use all of that first? Okay, so I hope I answered this question, but there is the grace period until if your products were manufactured before June 1st, 2025 until June 1st, 2027. And around font size, the rules around font size, yes, font has to be the exact same. So exact prominence between English and French. In terms of corrugated shipping box that holds your product that will be discarded, I can email you about this specific situation, but anything that's permanently affixed to the product or any promotional materials, these need to be translated into French. Sorry, only just to confirm, only promotional materials included with packaging need to incorporate this change. Not just promotional materials, but the actual labeling as well. If I understand your question correctly, Michelle, I can email you about this as well. Okay, Lisa, our product name is Soar No More, so would we have to get that translated into Quebec French for trademark? So your product name is okay as it is. I would have to look into your specific situation, but the product name, like we saw, for example, I can bring back the slide about from the Quebec website. Like here, for example, Best Soap was allowed to stay in English as the product name. But I would have to see, Lisa, your specific situation, and then I could provide you with more information. Okay. Sorry, I've lost. Okay, so I'm here now. If your website is on your product label, does your website also need to be translated? Same with social media. I'll have to look into this, but I will look into this and I will let you know, Jessica. Sorry, Michelle, you mean sales tools, sell sheets, sales decks versus consumer materials. Okay. With these situations, I would love to sit down and I can write out the advice for you properly once I have a moment to sit down and look through it all, but I will definitely respond to that, Michelle. Thank you so much for your question. Okay. Are there any other important questions? I can just go back to this slide here. Are there any other immediate questions that come to mind? Okay, if not, I will address all of the comments in the chat. I really appreciate you sending those, and I'll address them one by one. But I guess other than that, we're officially done with this webinar. So I really appreciate you joining today. I really hope this gave you some food for thought, or perhaps a clearer view of what to expect and how to start preparing. If you do need any support reviewing your materials or creating a compliance strategy, our team at Quality Smart Solutions is ready to help. So you can see a QR code on this slide to book a free consultation, our phone number and email address and website to contact us. But I really appreciate you taking the time today, and we really look forward to helping you achieve compliance and position your products successfully in Quebec. So on that note, I'd like to say see you next time, or as they say in Quebec, à bientôt.